Today we are going to be discussing astral projection and astral travel. I get asked about this topic consistently enough, at least once or twice a month, and I thought I would make a video here. I have other information from the Kitchen Occultist. I can leave links in the description for you guys, but I want to explain some of my experiences and some of the processes and problems I see in the community. I hate using that word for things because there's never a community. It's not what people try to make it seem like, But my experiences with astral projection started around age 12. And when I first had sleep paralysis, I feel like I'm vibrating out of my body. And my eyes are closed physically, but I can still see around me. And I feel like I'm dying. That's what it really feels like. And when you're unaware of what's going on, it's really scary. I thought there was something wrong with me. What if I have a tumor or something, or, all of these different, plausible factions for this sort of stuff can make you go crazy alone. And there wasn't a lot of information in the late 90s and early 2000s on astral projection. So how I found out I had astral experiences? I was watching Montel, and Sylvia Brown used to go off on Wednesdays on Montel, and a lot of us would ditch school to watch Sylvia Brown because even though she was a bit shady, that bitch had some fucking points, and I loved her. So I don't care. I will die on that hill because Sylvia Brown's made some mistakes in her life, but I vibed with that bitch, and I loved the things that she did. So I don't care if people judge me for that because I get it. But they had a guest on the Montel Williams show, and she had the girl in the audience was saying I have all these experiences where I'm vibrating and I can't see but I can, and I was like, oh shit, this is what I have to go through. And Sylvia explained it perfectly, that's astral projection, your body's trying to leave this and this and this, and I felt so validated. And then, of course, she was like, buy my book, guys. And I was like, bitch, I ain't got money. I'm on food stamps. But I ended up finding her book at a Goodwill a few months later. And I was so happy. So those are other synchronicities, too, that you realize before you learn about them. So anyways, I don't remember the name of the book because this psychic lady had 100 books. She was one of those types of people. And, but I remember the book was pretty cool. So anyways, with astral projection, which is completely different from astral travel, it's the second step in my opinion. First step is sleep paralysis. Second step is coming out of your body and you almost feel like you lose control. It's hard. It's like a magnet underwater. And when I first had these experiences, I was floating up to my ceiling, and then you're floating past your ceiling and you're like, oh no, and you're trying to swim down to your body. You're doing all of these weird things, and then you get sucked back in. You're like, choomp, and you wake up and you're like, what was that? Did I just almost die? But then when you get better at it, you get, a little bit more educated. You start to wander out a bit. Now, the first time I remember when I was venturing out of my room, I went to 7-Eleven, right down the street from where I used to live. It was really, really funny because when you're floating around and you still don't feel like you have complete control, everything is mirrored, so if one store is on one side of the street, it always appears on the opposite for me. And then you see a lot of spiritual activity. And it feels like those spirits know that you're not dead or, some other entity. They read your energetic print. And they can tell oh, we got fresh meat over here. So it's kind of a vulnerable feeling. I felt very naked and, really, really, really dangerous. Shouldn't have done that. Should have had some protection. I always do, but still I was really young. But anyways, I do recommend that you, if you can, keep a crystal grid under your mattress. If you don't have kids or pets around, different botanicals, different things for dream work can absolutely help. But for those sorts of experiences, because you want to protect yourself on the astral plane. But I also at the same time think that people get a bit too paranoid about that. It's kind of the difference between make sure you look both ways before crossing the street and telling somebody you're going to get hit by a car and you're going to be smashed to smithereens and die. And you're just well, I'm never fucking leaving the house again. That's a huge problem that I've seen with just spirituality in general and witchcraft and everything. It's there's so many scare tactics, and it almost feels like people are low-key trying to gatekeep. They don't want other people to have those experiences, or they're not brave enough to have them, so they start deterring everybody else. And there's just a lot of really vulnerable people. I understand. I have a lot of young, vulnerable people that come to my channels, and they're just searching for information. There's just a plethora of different types of styles and backgrounds of people. So when I say use your protections, please don't feel the need to like go crazy and be paranoid, because it's not healthy. In over 25 years of having chronic, when I mean chronic, like weekly astral experiences, only on one occasion was I afraid that I was going to die. And like, that's more than you need, right? And for me, it had to do with, I was on some like planet, and it was like a gas field, right? It was blue and it was gas. Whatever blue gassy stuff is, whatever that is, that's what I saw. But then there is these weird plants, and they almost look alien-esque, and they're like different shades of green and some pink in there. And anyways, I wanted to uproot this big vine from the gas floor that I was floating on. And when I did that, I felt like a huge, heavy weight like it just sucked me in, and then I woke up. Like, it was really like, I felt panic when it happened on the astral, like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then I woke up and I was like, oh man, that could have been really bad. I really felt that was really like dangerous. So whatever I did, that felt really dangerous. It could also just be all in my head and just a dream, right? So one thing that I like to do, that I just started doing, that I just did last night, and I'm going to stick to do, is what I should say, is I had an astral experience where I kind of like floated up and went backwards out my sliding glass door window. And then the direction that I headed, I remembered, because it's like right outside my house, right? And I know where everything is. And I looked up the coordinates. So there's this cool app I'll show you guys. It's called Star Tracker. I'm not like I don't do sponsored deals or anything, and I wouldn't if I was popular, because I'm just sick and tired of marketing. But like I might, but it would be like really, really, really specific. Like I would have to feel good about it. So anyways, I can't find this app. Here it is. But anyways, it shows you like where the coordinates are of stuff, like depending on where you're pointing your camera. So mine was pointed directly at Saturn, and I saved this photo. It was at exactly 0100 hours, right? And Saturn's like in Aquarius right now. So that's where I was last night, because I remember when I flew out my window, I flew toward this star outside. And Belial was with me at that point, because he had told me when I was going to sleep that I was going to go on a journey. And sometimes he kind of says it mentally, like we have, you know, like work to do, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to have a dream or something. But I haven't been having too many astral experiences. Like the past 2 months, it's been like 2 a month. So it's usually like every week. So anyways, I thought nothing of it. And then when I started to get sleep paralysis, I was like, okay, here we go. And then I floated out. But then when we floated toward this planet, I was in this white tunnel, but it wasn't like a glowing white. It was like a milky white. And this was last night. This was like less than 24 hours ago. And there was all of these black rocks like around us. And we were kind of just like floating on our way there, like flying. And usually when I've been in a tunnel with him, we're like walking at a human pace, and it feels like human time. But this was really different, like almost like Superman floating, but not as like, you know, comic book-esque. But then I was asking him, like, what is the white, what is it? And he was like, there's so many types of matter that it doesn't matter. And he makes all of these like silly, like corny dad jokes almost. And then we started rhyming like the words with like matter and the F word, and it was just weird, but it's like something Belial would do. So anyways, then we pivoted to where he came toward, like I'm right here and he's to the left of me, and then it was almost like he went doop, and then I'm like under him, and he was grabbing me, but it wasn't like in a romantic way, and the tunnel became dark and very earthy, and I have no fucking idea where we were, okay? And as I'm looking up at Belial, he's starting to shapeshift in front of me in different human forms, but it doesn't look like how he presents himself to me, or how he presents himself to other people, because I've watched like videos and read books, and you know, I'm really trying to figure all of this out, and I know that there's a limitless range of how, you know, spirits can present themselves. That's like, you know, a perk of that. And you can shapeshift too, by the way, when you're in the astral. Like, you can learn how to do that, and it's actually not too hard. You can kind of just think about it, and sometimes it might feel like it's taking a lot longer, but if you clear your mind and you don't think too hard, you can like shapeshift yourself. So I'm not like an expert at that or anything. But anyways, when Belial was holding me, he was shapeshifting and I didn't recognize him. And I was getting nervous because I thought, what if somebody like hijacked me, right? And then I looked at him and he looked me dead in the eyes. And it was like earth gold eyes at this point, because usually he has very black, like, you know, just pure black eyes. And I couldn't read. But then something shifted in his energy just from his eyes, and he let me know it was him. But then for a split second, I'm like, what if this freaking spirit or something's pretending to be my patron? And I said, you know what? I don't know why I did this. I said, I don't give a fuck. And I just grabbed him and I just went, wah, 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 wah. And it sounds so silly, but my experiences with him are very silly like that. And he was just like, kind of, okay, you know, whatever. And I was just like so I was so tired of being afraid of different things, because Belial makes you feel very protected, but he also kind of like lets you loose so you cannot depend on that too much, you know, like the relationship that I've had with any infernal, in all honesty, is they'll be protective, but they'll also kind of push you into the deep end of the swimming pool, and they'll be on standby, but they will not help you if you're just giving up right away and going, help, 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 I'm drowning. They'll kind of let you drown and calm yourself down, and then they'll kind of help you, or, you know, coach you through it, is like the best analogy that I can give. But that was the experience last night. And the weird thing is once we went to our destination, I woke up, and that never happens. Like, usually I suck back into my body. Like, and sometimes that happens when you're like leaving and then you come back in and you leave again. I've had that happen. But last night, he told me we're going to go somewhere special. And I was like, well, for what? I want to know what the fucking, what do I got to do now? What's the new fucking adventure? You know, and sometimes it's just like something nice. You know, one time I was in this forest with him, and because I do a lot of stuff with him astrally, not a ton, but like I've never had like a spirit, like friend, buddy, mentor thing. I'm not trying to like humanize them at all or anything, you know, any sort of entity to astrally travel with. So, and it's not every experience is he there. There's been times where I'm hoping that somebody will show up and nobody's there, and you're like, okay. But there's a time where we went into this forest and the trees were so beautiful, and it reminded me, because I read the book of Enoch after this. There were trees like how Enoch had mentioned. They were very like supernatural but beautiful. They were like not from earth, but they weren't like crazy, you know, they weren't like, you know, pink and rainbow and super dupers with cupcakes and sparkles. They were like green, but the types of green don't exist on our color spectrum. I can't remember it. And they were very beautiful. And he was like just holding my hands and like spinning in circles. Like, we were very childlike. He has very childlike aspects, but he still holds his shit. You know, he holds his ground and he does his shit that he's got to do. But in that experience, I saw him with somebody else while he was with me. Like, another aspect of him was in the forest with another female. And it was really interesting because his other aspect made eye contact with me. And I was like, oh, what does this mean? Are you going to die? You know, and he's just looking at me like, will you stop? You know, he's like, no, it's totally normal. Like, I just have multiple aspects. And I'm like, I didn't realize that you can be like in the same fucking room at the same time. I thought it worked a bit different. But he was just kind of like, and you'd have these mental conversations when you're astrally, you know, and he's just kind of like, you know, like smack you upside the head, like sort of comedically, but didn't do it, but like mentally he did. And then the woman, she was really like beautiful and natural, and she had like long, straight brown hair, and like she looked like a Stevie Nicks, but like with a white flowy dress and brown hair, like chocolate brown, chestnutty highlights, like just beautiful. I don't know if I had a feeling that she was also like me, like, you know, living here on Earth, but the way that she presented herself was so like beautiful and advanced and ethereal almost. So it was really cool to see. And I was freaking out though. I'm like, is there like some law? Like, if you cross paths with your other thing? And he just kind of looks at me like, you really fucking think that I'm that stupid? You know, like, you know, almost like not insulted, but like, just like, gosh, you overthink so much that you sound ignorant, you know? And that definitely happens. Like, I know I have a good range of street smarts for sure, and book smarts, but sometimes your common sense can just right out the window when they're just like on full blast and everything else is kind of on overdrive. So those were one of those experiences that I had with him that didn't have a purpose. Or maybe if it does, I don't know the purpose quite yet, because those are ways that entity works. You know, it's very artistic. It's very, if you overthink it, you're going to block yourself. If you just enjoy the experience, then it's going to come full circle in some other way, and it's going to be a piece to a puzzle that you will figure out. But it's very pleasurable experiences in that light. I have one, because I've talked about going to the underworld astrally. And there are people that I respect. I'm not naming any names or anything like that. There are people that I respect in the occult community so much that I believe are just a bit wrong about this. I've heard some practitioners say that it is impossible to visit the underworld, so we have to just imagine what we think. I respectfully disagree completely, because I've been there a couple of times, and that was crazy. I've talked about this on Kitchen Occultist. If you're coming from there, I'm sorry that I'm reiterating everything. But in those senses, instead of floating up, I've been pushed down, and it's a totally different experience. Like, I went to the abyss before I knew what the fuck the abyss was, and I felt like I was in purgatory, like I was drowning, but it was so peaceful. And I knew nothing and everything at once, and it just was like an infinite fall, but I also just let go, and I felt so good. And then I ended up in the underworld. And one experience that I haven't talked about, because I've been a bit really nervous to talk about it, because I can't make sense of it and I can't find anything about it. But I was at this bank. There's like modernization experiences that I have in the underworld. It's not just like creepy, dark, murky, blood dripping walls and onyx crystals and smoky quartz and, you know, gorgeous succubi trying to fuck the less essence out of you. You know, it's nothing like that. I mean, those are things I've seen. But I'm saying there was this banking system that I went to, and the bank was like a beautiful 1940s like train station, like the most gorgeous freaking shades of brown of wood ever, and everybody was dressed like, you know, mid-century America, or maybe pre-mid-century actually, like really just suits and ties, and it just fucking everybody looked sharp, man. And there was different demons and entities and species and creatures and everybody, not in the bank but just around. But there was this woman. She was a little, probably like in her, quote unquote, look like in her 50s. And she had like almost a beehive and a nice like pencil lined skirt and short chunky heels. And she, you know, she was just like a secretary almost. And she was so impressed that I knew King Belial. Like, she was so fucking impressed, and she wanted to tell me everything about this banking system. I don't know who she was, but she was like making a deal about it. And I was like, how the fuck did they know? You know, and that was my first experience understanding being marked. I had no idea, because Belial wasn't with me at that time, but I was in the underworld. But everybody was mentioning, they were like, oh wow, she's with King Belial, and they were really impressed. They were calling him by different names, and she explained to me that they have the currency system where they take things from offerings and they transmutate it and make their own paradise with stuff. And I'm like, this is making way too much sense, but it also sounds fucking nuts, you know. And even talking about it, I feel kind of like silly, like, I don't know if this is just, it was an astral experience though, and I was there. It was so freaking crazy, and it was like she was explaining this, and there was different like sections of the bank that you can go into, these little almost like booths, kind of like if you go to a Catholic church and you got to go confess to the, you know, the confession booths. Like, you go into something like that, but it's a lot better looking, not just like a curtain. Everything's intricate, like detail with the wood like carvings and stuff. It's so freaking amazing. Like, I wanted to just stay there. And they have a system of, for my understanding of like offerings, that they can use those energies for other things. Like, that makes sense, right? Does it make sense, or does that sound really crazy? Because if you think that's just a crazy dream, I 100% understand, but this was an astral experience. So having that happen was a really, really cool thing, but it really was different than the other underworld experiences that I've had. I've had less on one hand going to the underworld, but every other time has been a bit eerie and a bit primitive feeling, like the primitive aspect you'd think hell is, you know, the nature being out in nature in hell with the fiery skies and just really damp murkiness in some places, but it's also very beautiful. That's the thing. It's like they made their own. The underworld is very beautiful and they just made it their own, if we're going to go off of that concept. And it kind of makes sense. If they like little crystals and trinkets and stuff, maybe some are for their own for sure, but I don't know. So it'd be cool to get people's opinions on that. But you learn a lot during these travels. So I respectfully, highly disagree that you can't know what the underworld looks like, that it's only, if you kind of like visualize and fantasize. I know that can happen to where deity and spirits in general can give you visions. I really get visions these days, and they're not hallucinations. It's not psychosis. I was talking to somebody about that yesterday. I've had a history, and I'm extremely educated on postpartum psychosis and psychosis in general and schizophrenia, because there's a lot of idiosyncrasies between those two. But I want to just quickly say, when you have psychosis, it's like having 4 intense conversations with 4 different insane emotions spiraling all at once, and you don't even know if it's the past, present, or future, and you're not even coherent. Like, I don't remember a lot of the first year my son was born, because these episodes would come and go, and hormones played a role, and my mental health was struggling. I almost died from this sort of stuff. So it's really extremely important for me to tediously emphasize the importance of understanding the difference between those things, because some people are okay with being schizophrenic and having spiritual experiences. And in my experience of being completely psychotic and under 24-hour medical watch, I'm not kidding, there is a huge fucking difference between having some astral experiences that have a start to finish story, and sometimes there's bits and pieces in between, like with dreams, right? It kind of makes sense, but then you're somewhere else, but you can kind of get the overall story, you know what I mean? Maybe the story is just kind of staticky. This is not like that. Psychosis is completely crazy. So I'll save that for another episode. But in terms of the astral experiences, when I am gone and I'm not domestic, which for me, domestic travel means I'm going to my home city to this train track that I used to to go to, and I would sit on the fence or float on the fence. Things like that are domestic. If you want to go to India or something, that's domestic. But I go way other places sometimes now because of my infernal workings with infernals. That didn't happen until this started happening, because it's scary. But I feel intense jet lag. I feel like I have gone on journeys. Last night I just feel like I was out for the night and I came home late. If I went out and came home past midnight or something, and I feel a little not too rested, because astral travel will make you feel like you're awake the entire time, even though on average, from me documenting it, it's anywhere from an 8 to 11 minute duration that you're out there. And I only know this because I've consistently known what time I kind of fall asleep, because it'll happen when you're tired and you're sometimes overtiredness will do that, but you're just in that lull of going to sleep. You're transitioning into it, going to sleep, and then it's just and then you leave. So I think what happens for certain people is they skip REM sleep, and that can contribute to having lucid dreams and or astral experiences. But that is basic information that I saw on the internet. So please don't take that for literal information. But similar to some people with psychedelics, they'll have experiences where they're gone for months. Some people will have entire families. Some people will have entire life. It's sort of like that, only you feel like you're going to a different destination. I've never had an experience astrally where I have an astral family. I've known that people have had those experiences. My experiences are mostly you do have a home base you can go to. I've been to Belial's chambers. There was this huge cave, and it looked like a huge I don't know, almost like a tourmaline crystal. And he was it was a cave, and he was standing outside of the cave, and he wanted me to go in, and he had this beautiful it was kind of super dupers, but it was this beautiful king's quarters, that you would see a beautiful canopy bed and all of these things, but it was like black, and it's just super awesome. So anyways, I had that experience where I think I went to like his place, but it was like a cave in a like tunnel, and it was hidden out in the middle of nowhere. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because I thought he would have been in some big palace or something, but it was something completely different, where on the outside it kind of, you can tell it's like a cave, like there's something there, and it was really warded, so I don't think anybody can just like break into that. But then when you go in, it was like this beautiful, almost paradise in its own way. It's very earth feeling as well. Like he has a lot of, I'm not saying greenery, I don't see any greenery or anything like that, but it's very like earth feeling, like when you're just outside laying on fresh like soil, you know, like really good nutritious soil, not like dead earth. There is dead earth energy to him. But it was a really cool experience. But I felt very, very hungover the next day, and that experience seemed very short. But I felt like drunk and hungover. Like I get really, really drained. So I want to emphasize on the importance, if you are looking into astral projection and travel and you're trying to induce it, please practice spiritual hygiene, and please practice grounding, because you're going to absolutely need it. And sometimes these experiences can get so intense that you are freaking the fuck out because you're having an existential crisis about it. Like the next day for some of these experiences, I would just be pacing around my house and I'd be like, oh my God, this is fucking nuts. This is real. This is real. This is real. And you can go crazy doing that. So when that happens, disconnect. Do something super fun, watch a movie, go outside, ground onto like earth, like get your bare feet onto the earth, onto soil, onto grass, onto clover, whatever you need. Sometimes if you're doing heavy work too, I'll just say you can make like, you know, with clean soil, like you can smudge some mud like on your forearms or your legs or something if you're doing heavy work. I'm not saying just astrally, I'm saying in general. But back on topic, I really recommend that. In terms of astral hygiene, or spiritual hygiene, I should say, I use a mixture of like hyssop. I use Epsom salts. You can use things like certain soaps that have like corresponding herbs for spiritual cleansing. Hyssop is a really good one for me that I like to use. Eucalyptus works really well also. So just focus on your spine. I feel like the spine holds a lot of parasitic energy. And I know this might sound silly to some people, but I take cannabis medicinally, and sometimes I have to take very high doses to get through the day because I have fibromyalgia and I am already doing too much with that. And it interferes with my mental health sometimes. So I use cannabis. People called me a glorified drug addict for it. Okay. But I will get to this point if it's a higher milligram dose where I get like spirit vision and I can see, and I'm coherent and I'm not sloppy or messy, but I'm just, instead of me getting paranoid these days, because I used to, when it would be too high, I worked through that. I worked with the plant medicine, but I get this spirit vision where I can see. And I saw on my husband's spine, he had like parasites because he has chronic bad nightmares about being in war since he was like a kid. And it's every night. Like I've been doing work, so it's not as frequent now, but it was one of these things where it's like, this has to be a past life thing. And, you know, I started to work with him because he's explained shit in detail that it's just really, really intense, and he suffers with it, you know? So his spine, as I can see on his back, and I have, you know, I call it just my spirit vision. There was just these like spirit little parasite, like tadpole ghosts on his spine, and I did some Reiki. I'm not a master at it. I just do domestic stuff at home and some crystal work and energies and Hertz music and all this stuff. And I was clearing them out, but I felt very sick doing it. And I have elements of brujeria in my practice, and there is certain things that you do, like you draw an X or un eje. It's called an X, and it's to prevent energy from entering to you, whether you're doing self-cleansings or like limpias or on other people. So having like an X on your right hand can help with that. I know it sounds crazy, but I use a combination of like cinnamon ashes, or I have like cloth that I use for that. But I still felt very drained, and I can still see them like coming back. And the next day he had a little bit, but not as much. But it was like an infection almost. So it's really weird to explain, but I can't help but believe that I know what I'm seeing. But I practice doing spiritual hygiene every so often because it's really, really important. So if you feel very lethargic, and you normally don't feel lethargic when you wake up, like I personally don't feel lethargic when I wake up. I'm like, boom, ready to go. But I feel drained and hungover, and there will just be this sort of, like, you can feel it, right? Like when you have a spiritual experience, or any sort of supernatural experience, or like a ritual, or you have like imposter spirits coming into your environment because you're not doing your shit fucking right, and that's all on me. You can just feel that layer, that essence, and it's just not good. So I really recommend practicing, spiritual hygiene for that, and taking care of yourself and grounding, because some people get very, very, very delusional, and they overemphasize on how amazing these experiences are, and that's all they care about. And as much as these experiences are amazing, and I'm not trying to be, hypocritical about like the scare tactic stuff I was talking about earlier, but they are also very confronting and very intense, and it's a lot easier said than done to think that you can handle those sorts of stuff. I'm just talking to people who are like novice at this. That's not the predominant of our audience, but I do get a lot of youngsters coming in and wanting to know more about this and thinking like, oh wow, I want to do that. It's like, yeah, it's fun, and I recommend, if that's something you feel really like aligned with, like a calling, like I really need this for my practice, then go for it. But if you're really like obsessed with the fucking confetti about it, like, wow, it's so beautiful, like it's probably not gonna work in that sense, in my opinion. And if you're working with infernals for those reasons, I can't really judge, because maybe some of them that do astral work, which a lot of them do, will really like you and just be genuine and sweet. Not everybody has a big lesson. Not everybody has to have this big thing. So those are things that you got to go through with this sort of stuff. At least I do. It would be nice if I didn't. But you can't really just pick and choose what lessons you're going to have. But I do feel a bit frustrated that I'm struggling with today, because I went to this planet, and as soon as we got there, I woke up and I'm like, I don't know what happened. I haven't done a reading on it or anything either, because I've been a bit busy this morning, and I also am, when I have astral experiences, I need to ground and like decompress for a bit, because my energy's been drained lately. I'm doing heavy work for family members. I did some work for a friend that came over the other day. I am like really busy, and I gotta just keep hydrated and ground. So oats are really good for that too. Like eat oats or drink oat milk, do something like that, because having these sorts of experiences chronically, I've realized the more proficient I've become, like with witchcraft in my practice. I wasn't grounding when I was younger nearly enough, outside of just, running around with the kids, barefoot or something. I was always that type of mom, in the backyard. Like, I probably wasn't grounding as much as I needed, because I would feel so exhausted sometimes after just normal astral experiences. In the astral realm, it seems like a lot of spirits know you, and I want to get back to being marked. I don't know where, but there's something that people, I always call them people, that they know that I'm associated with some of these high-ranking infernals. And my, gosh, I sound like I've lost my fucking mind. Like, I listen to myself, seriously. But seriously, it's very important, because I see this stuff online where people get really cocky about that. Boy, is that the wrong idea to have, because they're going to let you ride with that for a bit, and then you're going to, I just really, really wouldn't. And it's not to scare people. Like, look, it's not about, ooh, they're infernals, but yeah, they're infernals, and they have boundaries, and they have feelings, and they don't want to be used, I wouldn't think. I sure as hell wouldn't. I would be upset if somebody just like, not that I don't have any fucking experience with people only hitting you up when they need something or anything. If you are attempting to induce astral travel, I have only been successful once. I have attempted 4 times, twice on myself solo, once on my husband solo for just him, and then one time for a date night we both tried to. And I only had success once using a lower hertz. I've seen stuff where you can use like astral hertz music and it's in like the 900s. I used like 140 or something and it happened. So I don't know. I'm not like the biggest thing with hertz music yet, like and understanding the frequencies. Like I do have a bit of a range, but that's something you can look into. I also recommend, taking a ritualistic bath if you're trying to induce it and getting into meditation, wearing something very comfortable and clean and black. I really feel, unless it's part of your practice, like people who practice Santeria will wear white on Mondays. They'll wear white shoes and white shirts. I understand those sorts of variables. But in terms of inducing astral travel, I even sleep in black because I notice I just do better sleeping in black. It's protective. So in a lot of us, people might think, oh, you're always drawn to wearing black. I think a lot of us just were intuitive and we knew that we needed to keep our wards up. It's a protective color. I feel very protected and warded off in black clothing, and it sounds very cringy, but I wear black at night and I make sure my linens are always nice and clean. Smoke cleanse your bed. If you don't have pets or small children, you can look into doing like crystal grids, or you can do like mojo bags with different herbs and mugwort to induce those sorts of things. In my experience though, it was just hertz music and like meditation and being clean. I will say though, since we're on the topic of beds, if you are a heavy dreamer or you have chronic astral experiences, please cleanse your bed. Wash your bedding once a week and smoke cleanse. And if you can, flip your mattress, clean under, vacuum under your bed. I'm serious. Like, I'm not saying you have to do all that. Like, maybe I change my sheets and stuff once a week, but like cleaning under, a big deep clean under my bed. I have like a mattress. I just pick it up and vacuum it so it's easy for me. But if it's not easy for you, I understand why you'd be like, bitch, I ain't gonna clean under my bed like that every week. But what I do recommend is keeping that area cleansed, because that energy will pick up, and whether it's from astral work and or lucid dreams or just dream work or just energy work and meditating, like anything else too. Like, I'm sorry, I'm like ADHD, like on high right now, but like Belial is always like at the edge of my fucking bed. So his energy too will leave like an imprint at times. So you want to cleanse that area, because I've noticed that I will just not have good sleep. I'll have the most restless sleep in history, and I'll be up every hour. I already have struggles with having chronic pain because it wakes me up most nights, and I'm just like, it's like having surgery without medication sometimes, and I don't feel like I don't like smoking weed in the middle of the night, and I'm not going to take another edible and that sort of stuff. So sometimes I just go through it, or I get to work and here. But I recommend cleansing that area, cleansing your pillows. I wouldn't have certain crystals near my bed either. I've talked about this. Like, rose quartz is just a no-no for me. I had no fucking idea. Do you guys want me to talk to you about that real quick? I know this is a dream and this is like an astral video, but I had a chunky rose quartz crystal, right? And I was letting my 4-year-old play with it, safe. He's just playing with it. And then at some point he stopped playing with it and we just moved on with our day, and it ended up under my mattress, right? For like 3 days. And I was having the most horrific nightmares that you can fucking imagine. And at some point I was like, what is going on? Because usually there's rhyme to reason. Usually there's some, this is just like crazy. I had this nightmare that I was in a theater and I knew I wasn't supposed to be in there. And there is this dictator, like a Stalin, that everybody knew was like a Stalin, right? They were aware of this. And he was on the stage, and he had like a World War I like sword, right? And he wanted somebody to come up on the stage and like a volunteer. And I fucking knew I wasn't going to do it. But some dude that was like, he was a bald dude. He was wearing like a polo shirt. I've talked about this before. He was like very, one of those people that sells like protein powder, and they're just like all into fitness, and they're kind of like annoying about it, and they're trying to sell you some pyramid scheme and how it fucking changed their life. It was this dude, like he's jogging up there and shit. Like, calm down, just walk up like a fucking human. But anyways, he got up to the stage and he was all ready to be the volunteer, and just boom, fucking decapitated him. And I'm just like, oh. And I'm just like, what? And you just hear like, ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-doom. And I didn't know what the fuck to make of it. Like, his head fell off, and the dictator was like, you guys were expecting something from me. You guys knew who I was, but you still wanted something from me. And I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to learn from this? I wasn't gonna, So when I woke up, I couldn't make any sense of this dream. I think I just ended up in somewhere that I shouldn't have been. Like that, there was no lesson for me in that dream. I really felt like I went somewhere else and it was fucking scary and it was really real. And I felt like I was somewhere. I was sitting down in a theater. I could feel it. I knew what I was wearing, like all of these things, right? It smelled like a theater, sort of, like, you know, I don't know what the fuck happened, but I found this rose quartz chunk, you know, and I started Googling, and right away it came up with a bunch of shit, like, do not have rose quartz near you because people were, like, complaining about nightmares. I'm like, I thought rose quartz was just fucking peace and vibes. Like, damn, I thought it was, like, love and shit and healing. I didn't know it was that. So that was just a dream that I had. But just a side note, getting off topic as always, I personally just would not have rose quartz around if you think that that would happen, or maybe you can test it out. I don't know. I feel like when I do test things out, I have to have a clear mind about it. I can't have an expectation. You know what I mean? Because then if you do get that result, it's going to be like disingenuous. But then if you don't, you're going to be like let down. So it's really important, like if you do like induce things like astral travel, don't wait for something to happen. I was talking to my husband about that because I can feel his energy, and we read each other very, very well. I was like, you can't wait for it to happen. You have to just like go to sleep and relax. You know, I was telling him just rest, listen to the music, and I was just making, the energy felt good, and the veil felt very thin too that last time that I tried it. I can sense like the 4D within the 5D, for lack of a better term. I can feel it, like almost smell it, like I can almost taste the cool thinness of the astral plane. So, and I was wide awake and I was like, okay, this is really interesting. So, but there was no success that time. So unfortunately, I'm not an expert at inducing. There are people that can do this very naturally at will, and I think that's really amazing. For me, it's just, you know, chronic and sporadic and involuntarily. But all in all, I hope you guys enjoy hearing about these experiences, and I really want to recreate some of them and bring them to life, like, so badly. So those are like things that I'm working on in my creative path, you know, and I know that some of you guys know what I mean. So my whole experiences with infernals and working like with them and going to the astral has inspired like a new path for me creatively, and, you know, a new career opportunity. So I'm learning, and I'm just a student right now, but I want to bring some of these ideas to life in ways that can captivate it, because I think they're just too beautiful to just be lost in my mind, because I'm not going to be here forever, you know, and you're not going to be here forever. And I'm okay with that, because I've had so many of these amazing experiences. It would be foolish to think there's nothing out there. Like, it really would at this point, because it would make no sense too. Like, why would our minds play such cruel tricks on us if there's just nothing after death? And there's so many experiences and so many stories, and I know a lot of them are bullshit, but there's too many consistencies for me to believe that there's nothing after this. I honestly think it just keeps continuing. I don't think it's this big thing where, you know, oh, we're going to heaven or hell. Like, the underworld exists, but it's not what the biblical text tries to scare people into avoiding. There are beautiful parts of that realm, and there are very scary parts of that realm, and I've been to the scary parts, and I'm sorry, again, I've talked about this online, but one experience that I had going to the underworld and being pushed under was Belial having me go into like a 3-wall room, but it was outdoors, like an area, and it was very, very dark and creepy, and the walls were wet, and they were like blood, and it was like, it's stench. He made that known for me to smell. It was like just decay. I know what dead bodies smell like. I had a neighbor that died, and she was there for like 2 weeks. She was an older person, and her window was open. It was the middle of summer in Sacramento, California, so I know what dead bodies smell like, and that's what this smelled like, you know. And whatchamacallit, I was scared because the energy in that room was like somebody did something horrific to like the most innocent sort of beings, you know, like just, it was murder. And Belial made it very clear. He's very, I don't want to say they don't have a moral compass where, you know, because they're so expanded, these things, they understand life after death. So it's the same as like, well, I have a 3-year-old, and if her ice cream falls and she starts crying, if my ice cream fell, I wouldn't cry, right? I would understand, hey, there might be more, there'll be more another time, all these factors. But a 3-year-old, that's huge. So huge things that are naturally huge to humans, like death and terrible things, they're expanded, and that's why they don't react the same way they do. But they do have empathy for us. So when I say that Belial has a sense of sadness and empathy, he is sad that the world has this sort of stuff, but it's not the same as we are. It's just not really necessary for all of the cruelty that we have, because we're in a state of imbalance right now. It's obvious, right? So there is this sort of feeling that I get. He kindly and gently told me that I have to just get used to some of these discomforts so I can understand the energy more. So I can understand if I'm taking this dark path, I don't get to just do all the fun, cute, frilly things that are dark. Like, yes, all the black tourmaline and crystals and tarot cards and I'm not saying that's like dark arts, because that can be either or. But you know what I mean. It's more than just hexing. It's more than just learning curse work. It's more than just like working and learning from infernals. It's like when you have these astral experiences and you're really, really wanting to be a student of the universe, because that's your calling. And for me, that has been my entire life. Like and it's not like I want to know everything. I want to know about this stuff. He will teach you. So he puts you in those situations where it's not for torture. It's a silent calm. So you can get used to understanding those sorts of energetic imprints, and you have an opportunity to study them in a safe environment. Because if you have to go through those things in life, and I would hate to hear anybody having to go through those sorts of things at all, any of it, you don't have time to study that sort of energy, right? And it's not in preparation for anything. It's just to help me navigate myself. It's to help me be safe and not afraid of the dark, like I talked about in the first episode here. I am very, very happy in the dark, and the eeriness doesn't frighten me as much. And Belial does frighten me astrally. Like one time I was coming out of my body, and this wasn't that too long ago, but he was kind of like pulling me up, and I can feel myself lifting up, and then his face like stretched out, and it was super creepy that I got offended and like angry about it. Like the next, not angry, like when I say angry, I'm not yelling at Belial, like I'm not stupid. But I'm just kind of like, why would you do something like that? Like, that was so eerie and so, like, discomfortable. It's just like, why would you do that? And he says, because it helps you understand different aspects and the capacities that I have, so you don't get just drawn to certain ones. Because that's one thing I will say, working with fallen angels, is there is definitely a charm, and you can be cast under that spell and fall deeply in love. And I've had to be and I've talked to my husband, he knows all of this stuff, so I don't want people to get it twisted, like, oh, your poor husband's just sitting there while you're doing this. Like, no, these are serious things to us, and I would never like do anything to manipulate stuff for personal gain. I have a really, really healthy, open understanding and communication with my partner. So if you struggle in those areas, I don't want to come across as like I'm just disrespectful and just wanting to go screw all these like hot spirits, and my husband just got to deal with it. Working with infernals, you can become very, very, very like drunk because they will, some of them will love you, and they will love you in such ways they can't even show you that capacity. So Belial will astrally show me different versions of himself that I'm not quite used to, so I can be comfortable with his discomfort. That absolutely happens. And the astral is a great area for that to happen, because my visions with him in particular a lot of the times come at night when I'm going to bed, and it's really unpleasant, and it's also like tedious because I have to get up and do stuff sometimes. But astrally, even though I don't feel rested, it feels safer, and it feels safe enough to know that I'm not in harm's way, but also unsafe enough to know that I'm not completely out of harm's way. And it's not with him necessarily. It's just they will let you fall if you're arrogant and if you're not willing to broaden out a little bit. And in my experience astrally, since I've been doing this so much, he absolutely is active and involved in those sorts of things. So I'll say, all in all, for the last, less than 5 years of doing this sort of stuff, and working with him for about 2.5 years, I think. 3 are we going on? I have it all written down. These are the most intense astral experiences I've ever had. And that's not necessary. You don't have to work with fallen angels in order to have them. Because there are a lot of practitioners that I genuinely believe that can induce this. And their stories and the places they've been are similar to places I've been. I've heard people going to like a school. I've been to a school. I've definitely been to a school that looks like it was abandoned and built like in the 1990s. And which doesn't feel like too long ago for me. So when I say that, I'm not trying to say it was that bad. But it wasn't like this most ethereal sort of magical place. It's like there's like a lot of other shit that goes on and it's not as glamorized. But I've had beautiful experiences with Belial on the astral, just a handful, not like hundreds or anything. But I've also had equally beautifully terrifying experiences where you know that you're going to be learning. But these experiences, you can take them for what they are. You can say whatever you would like. I'm fine with that because this path benefits me. It really does. I'm a better person because of my workings and because of my experiences. I'm a better mom. I'm a better wife. I'm healthier. I'm more content in my life and I'm more focused and driven. I've always been driven, but I'm just feeling like I'm turning into the version of myself I was always supposed to be, or I was supposed to be at this divine timing, because I wouldn't have been her, or I'm not working toward her without all of my past messiness and mistakes and, other shit people have put me through. So tying it in astrally, the astral realm for me is such a great, I don't want to say playground, but in maybe an arena for learning and exploring. But please, if you have these experiences and you struggle with wanting more of those experiences, you have to ground yourself because you can go completely insane. I have had these sorts of experiences. I've talked about being face to face with, or fucking eye to eye with the Ophanum, and that changed me. And that was my first astral experience with Belial. I went down this tunnel. I've explained it. I'll link the video in the description. But I saw the Ophanum, and I saw it so hard that I don't have social anxiety anymore. Like, I literally stopped having that, and it was weird. Because I'm thinking, well, maybe that needed to happen. This was a couple years ago because I had such social anxiety. I was always like afraid to be out of my shell, even though I was so free spirited. And now I'm okay. Like, I've been faced with so much like diversity and spirits and very confronting things on the astral that I forget that people don't believe. So when I talk about these experiences, it's the same as going to Vegas for me. It really is. Like, I feel like I've traveled different places, but it's not like my personality trait. But there's something when I look into my eyes in the mirror now, I see something different in me. I see like I've been places. Like, I know the stars a bit. And I know that sounds so egotistical, but I'm serious. I'm not even fucking playing. Like, I just feel that I've been other, like, this place is just not it. Like, the earth is so beautiful and there's so much to experience, and this plane it's hijacked and we hate it. There's a bunch of fucking systems in place that are keeping us in mental cages and keeping us fighting against each other. And it's starting to backfire because we fought against each other so much that these big companies are trying to like persuade us that they care about our social and political views, and they flip-flop and everybody's like, yeah, fuck off. That is where we are just on the surface of things, let alone all of the terrible, terrible things that happen into the world. But instead of having an escapism mindset where you want to go to the astral and you want to float around in outer space and it sounds really fun, take those experiences that you have, that knowledge, and apply it to your life here on earth, and we can share it with each other because we need to expand and we need to be able to be okay with that. I'm very confident and okay with people calling me a crazy kook. I've heard that shit enough in my life. Like, I'm fine with it. What do you want me to do? Go get a job at fucking Walmart then? Like, I've been down that road. I've done that sort of shit. I've worked in those systems. I've never worked at Walmart. I worked at Target, but I got fired really quickly because I am not cut out for retail. I'm sorry. Like, I am not cut out for retail. I lasted less than 3 months. And there's no way. I just have to say on a side rant, there's no fucking way in hell I would ever allow myself or allow my children to be in a situation dealing with Karens being abusive toward them. I'm lucky I didn't go to jail. I was pregnant at the time though, so I wasn't getting in any fist fights. There's a glimpse on who I used to be. But anyways, I'm not that person anymore because of these skills that I've acquired in different worlds. And it feels heavy because our world feels heavy right now. Like, our world feels really fucked up, and I don't want people to escape it. I don't want people to have that ideal that we have to just go to sleep and escape into our dreams, because I've had people talk about that. I've had people say, I wish that I can just have these experiences as you and never wake up. And it's like, you don't want that. There's so much beauty in earth, and the thing we have to do is learn how to transmutate our experiences, the good ones to apply the good elements of our life, and the bad ones we take that energy and then we build off of it. And you build things like discipline and focus and nurturing for yourself and for other people. And I know I sound like I'm just fucking on one right now, but it's true. These experiences have solidified me as a person and given me a foundation that I've always needed to grow. And it's because of working with Belial, and it's because of working with Hecate, it's because of working with Lilith, and it's because of working with Lucifer. I have seen all of those on the astral. Hecate shows up as is, though, like on the fucking physical. So I don't care what anybody says. Like, you can call me crazy all you want, but the most important thing I think I will say out of everything is to just make sure you have some protection and make sure that you stay grounded and spiritually cleansed, because you don't want to have your mental health affected, first of all, because it could, absolutely. I have been so dumbfounded by some of these experiences. I'm like, there's no way I could have made that up in my mind. And if that's possible, if everything that I thought about subconscious made this fucking code and this that for me to experience this simulation there on the astral, then what are we really then? You know, those are different variables, and I respect those sorts of opinions. I believe that this is external, and I'm okay with that, because it seems like the lesser plausibility, and it seems like the more immature option to take to people. Like, oh, you know, there is an element to spirituality, I will say, where sometimes it can feel a bit disappointing when people just believe all of the frills and woo-woo, and they don't want to admit that there's science involved into this, and that it's less interesting because it's not sparkly stars and mysticism. And mysticism is a real thing. Like, I know mystics, you know, but the thing is we need to not over glamorize them and have some self-control with the glamour, the charming, I'm trying to think of the word right now. What is the adjective I'm looking for this? It's seductive. Magic in general is seductive. And if you get too seduced into it, you're going to want to just keep going back to the astral. And people can get really crazy with psychedelics as well. That's even more so, if anything. You can't have that mindset with this sort of stuff. You have to have a mindset of having your fucking shit together and being a bit level-headed. You don't got to be like some grandmaster. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to say that. But you have to be level-headed, because I have found myself being so fascinated with some of these experiences that I'm like, I really want to go back in and find more. And you can't, because it's draining. Having an experience like that, even though it's only 8 minutes of our physical time and it feels like, you know, entire 2 weeks of our physical time, you feel that energy. You can't just keep going and doing it. Like I told my husband too, I was like, I really recommend just take a break after a few days and we can try again, or once a week or something, and just ease into it. And he's totally understandable about it. But I really don't recommend doing this sort of stuff, because I've had chronic astral experiences, like small, boring ones, you know, 3 or 4 days in a row involuntarily, and you feel really crazy at the end of it. Like, no, I'm just like sleep deprived. And even though you got solid sleep, you go back to sleep. I went back to sleep last night. I took some notes, and I did some things. Let me read my notes. I want to just see that real quick. Okay, so the only thing I didn't mention, I don't think, is that star that we saw near the direction of the gym that's in my little area. Was Lucifer's sigil was like being on it, and it was really weird. So I thought that like we were going to Venus. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it didn't feel like Venus at all. Like, you know, when you think of the planet Venus, you feel like you know the energy of that planet, especially if you know some things about it. This didn't feel like that, but I felt like I knew where we were going, but I wasn't sure. But it was like this weird thing. So that's the only thing that I missed out that I didn't talk about during this whole podcast. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and hearing about my experiences. I'm sorry that I ramble on so much. I would love to be able to organize my astral experiences. And I do document those things because you will forget and you won't document everything. I keep journals, as you guys know, digital ones, physical ones in my fucking head at this point. Not every experience gets documented, which is unfortunate because I've had some amazing experiences and amazing knowledge, and then I'm just like, poop, totally forgot, and that's on me, and I'm sure if it comes back to me, it'll be divine timing. So I'm going to conclude with that today, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And if you have any questions about the astral, please leave them in the comments below, and I can save them for another episode because we can totally talk about this in the near future. So you take care, guys.